Now it's like people are making millions of dollars in their salary.
Do you need a technical co-founder nowadays?
My answer is yes, but my behavior says no. Having great people around you, great people who are on your team is critical. The thing that you have to do as a venture capitalist is figure out really quickly who are the exceptional players, who's got a shot.
They don't need to look professional because they are professional.
I learned to like shut up and listen.
How did you know it's your calling?
I think you just feel it. I love the baths. So like I go to the baths all the time and somebody recognized me naked at the sauna.
Watch my content. Welcome, Kate. Kate McAndrew, general partner and co-founder of Baukunst, $100 million early stage venture fund.
So happy to be here. Yay! Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. It's been a long journey of me watching you on TikTok, on Instagram, and I have a confession to make. First time I saw you, I'm like, this is not serious. I swear. And then I always know when something like triggers, like causes some emotional reaction, it always a reflection that where I'm not allowing myself to just like be big, authentic and shine. And I looked into your content and you're legit. And I realized that in my content, I started also being more courageous and more authentic without that fear of being misjudged. Mm-hmm. That, oh, she can't be a top-notch lawyer because look, she's wearing this dress and she's driving Bentley and she's recording all of these videos.
I mean, don't we all be driving a Bentley? Like, just saying.
But I used to hide, actually. Not hide, but I used to not show material possessions. Like, for example, like Chanel bag, I would never show it. Or going to the store, I would never show it. Or like recording myself in business class, I wouldn't do that. Marina Mogilka, Silicon Valley girl, she was my content advisor, and she's like, you actually need to show it because you talk about money. And I was like, no, I'm a serious lawyer, I came from big law and blah, blah, blah. She's like, no one cares. Like, if you want to get attention, you kind of have to do it. So I wanted to ask you, how did you come to that format? You always were like that? You're very entertaining, you're very helpful and valuable, but you're entertaining. Or you will coach that you have to be entertaining, you cannot be boring, no one wants that.
I was not coached on that. I think like I didn't even have TikTok on my phone until I started to make TikTok content. So I literally had no idea what the format was. And I got advice like you have to do stuff with your hands.
You have to do it like...
It was very, and I respect the nails, I cannot do it. I've had them one time, I was so frustrated. I lasted literally 2 hours and I went and had them cut down. So
oh my God.
Yeah, we can't be doing that. But yeah, I don't know. I think that I've been in venture capital for so long and it is a boys club and it's a boys club, a poorly dressed boys club. And I've just stood out from the beginning. And I think it took really maybe 5 years in the industry, you know, being at these events and trying to figure out how to wear the like t-shirt in a way that felt good to be just like, fuck the t-shirt, you know? So I had already gone through that arc and kind of come into my own personal expression in my work. Mm-hmm. And so honestly, like that experience of expressing myself on the video, like I didn't really have that worry. I think because I have come to be myself wherever I go all the time. And this is funny, I was at the banya the other day and I was like naked in the
Russian?
sauna.
Or what is happening?
Well, I love the baths. So like I go to the baths all the time and somebody recognized me naked at the sauna and I was just like, I love your TikTok. And I was like, okay, like whatever. Like I'm myself at the banya, I'm myself when I'm putting my makeup on, I'm myself at work. I find it too exhausting to play parts. And I think I tried to play parts for long enough. And like, I also think when I became a GP and co-founded the fund, like I really went through like a big evolution in myself in kind of coming into my power. And,
I even have like goosebumps when you
it was very, I love your tattoo, but it was I was surprised because I considered myself to be deeply empowered, but what I realized was a lot of my power had come from like a fuck the system, I'm gonna win, I'm gonna beat you energy, like I'm gonna get this deal done, and all of a sudden you're like, I'm on top.
Yeah.
I actually have all the power. And now all of these decisions, the full weight of them is on me, and I'm not against anyone.
Yeah.
And it was a really interesting reckoning. And so I think that whole journey also was parallel with me becoming a mother. You know, so all of this was identity reformation. So by the time I got on TikTok,
you were enlightened.
I don't know. I also I think I hadn't been on TikTok. I didn't know when he wasn't on TikTok. I was like, I don't know who these people are watching these videos. You know, I felt a lot more of that worry about how I would be perceived when I started putting content on LinkedIn, because that's where my professional community is.
Yeah.
Right. And so I feel like when I was doing the videos on TikTok and
low pressure
Instagram, it felt low pressure, low stakes. On LinkedIn, and I still sometimes on LinkedIn, I'm like, ooh, can I say this? Like, I don't know. So I get more of that on LinkedIn, but I think it was actually like a very healthy suspension of disbelief to believe that I didn't know anyone who was going to see these videos, because ultimately like everybody saw these videos. So I was like I didn't really think about that. I think that was very helpful.
Wow. Okay, that is super helpful. So for 5 years, you went through this journey of kind of like self-acceptance and stepping into your own power. So now you just show your all parts. And that's why it is what it is. And that's why I think it's very successful, because people could read that you're real. And then when they see the substance behind it, I think only a person who is successful can be like, I wouldn't say can be playful, but if a true professional, like in top 1% of the world, they're playful because they're confident in their own capabilities. They don't need to look professional because they are professional. And I think it's like the next stage. So you walk that journey
and
before.
It's interesting because I see this in founders, and it's something I really look for, like on a first call. And I remember back when I was an associate, you know, you're grinding, looking at hundreds of decks a week, you're on back-to-back 30-minute calls. And very quickly I realized that the people who were exceptional would be very easeful. They could explain incredibly complex things very quickly and succinctly. And the people who kind of puffed themselves up and were defensive or made things feel out of reach or overcomplicated, they were the B players.
Yeah.
Right? And like, we're not like, they're not bad people. It's not that they're not smart, but like our job is to separate who's an A+ player from who's just, you know, a good professional, right? But that like the thing that you have to do as a venture capitalist is figure out really quickly who are the exceptional players, who's got a shot to really build something really big. And I think that, yeah, I learned to like shut up and listen and ask a lot of questions and kind of see what came through.
Okay, who are the A players? Can you tell me?
I mean, I think Laura Modi is like one of the top entrepreneurs I've ever worked with, the CEO of Bobby Baby. She was an Airbnb exec for, I think, 6-7 years, but very early on in that journey, and then started an infant formula company, has scaled, you know, huge profitable business, completely changed the narrative of that industry, of what it means to feed our children, operating in an incredibly complex, regulated industry of infant formula, you know, raised $100 million to verticalize and buy a manufacturing plant. I mean, she has tackled complex issue after complex issue after complex issue. But if you see her, cool as a cucumber. Poised. She's got 4 kids.
4 kids?
4 kids.
What?
So like she is like, to me, the epitome of like of just like entrepreneur at heart, right? Yeah. Entrepreneur at heart.
So the question, see, you're an early stage investor, so you want to be among first 5 people founders go to when they start the company. So how do I identify a player early on? Because right now it's kind of easy to see, like to look at the successful person, of course, a player. We have all of the proof. But before that big proof comes in, how do you see those roots and you bet on them?
So it's really interesting. I do think that there are a lot of categories where we invest deeply. Things like engineering software, architecture, engineering and construction, like deep manufacturing tech, where actually professional excellence in that domain is pretty important. And so there are some areas where we're not just looking for someone great, smart, and young and hustling. We're looking for a track record that has given that entrepreneur an earned insight into why they should build what they're going to build or an outsized ability to execute. So we are sometimes looking for like an exceptional professional track record depending on the space that you're building in.
Because they figure out the maze of the issues.
Yeah, the maze of the issues. And it's interesting, like quite a few companies in our fund one are coming out of like Apple, for example, or Tesla, where these companies built tools and infrastructure internally that is leapfrogged ahead of what's out there in the general design manufacturing space, right? And so they're kind of taking what they built at those best-in-class institutions and building those tools for the broader market. So sometimes it's, I built this in a best-in-class institution and now I'm building it for the market. So it's another example.
How do you separate, because at big companies, they can afford hiring B and C players. They actually have to hire those. How do you separate A, B, C, people coming from those?
So I actually don't have to. Because my only job is to find the A players, because the number one thing that A players do is find other A players. Like that is actually, so you think you do your best to hire an A player, and then when in the first 18 to 24 months, you know if they're an A player or not, and you can tell by who they hired. So what talent were they able to attract, and you get to experience what the output that team is putting out there. What's the team culture that they're building? A players bring A players. They bring A players and they convince them to leave $1 million a year salaries to take $150K in equity, right? So they have this ability to sell. And that's another thing that you can tell, like, if you're from nowhere and you find a way to get on my calendar and you make me believe in you, not only does that mean that you can fundraise, it means that you can sell. And guess what? You're going to have to sell if you're a founder, right? You're going to have to sell to your employees. You're going to have to sell to your customers. You're going to have to sell to future investors. So that ability to sell, that ability to inspire is something that I think the best founders have. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they're a big, gregarious, extroverted person. They could be a totally nerdy, deep tech-ish person that knows how to sell to other totally nerdy, deep tech-ish people, right?
Yes.
So, but I think I actually don't have to worry about the B and C players. I have to worry about finding the A players because they bring the other A players.
But if they just came to you, one person, team, and they're just starting, how would you know whom they recruited?
Oh, they haven't recruited them yet.
Yeah.
Right? And so I don't get to judge based on how good their team is. Like I have to figure out through the due diligence process, like, do I think this is a backable founder? And we do that through a lot of, in-person interaction, seeing how they handle the meetings, doing operating plan reviews, calling a bunch of references. So there's a lot of things that we do to try to get an assessment on this person. And it is probably the most difficult, the most subjective part of the job.
The whole process.
Yeah.
And any tips that a person, like imagine A player, some people actually don't interview well. Some people, they have troubles. And as a person who is hiring, I've had those hires. So A players, but you wouldn't tell. You think it's an A player, you hire oh my God. Any tips for those A players to stand out? Because it's also a game, it's a process, raising venture money. So
number one is the strength of the introduction. So the social proof and the introduction is incredibly meaningful. And if you're an A player and you've been standout somewhere, A players deliver, right? They deliver. So if you've delivered in your work, exceptionally, I bet you your boss or someone who knows you or has worked with you knows a VC that can network you in with someone. If you can get someone that I respect to write me a note and say, I've got an A player. This person is extraordinary. They're doing something interesting that's worth your time. I'm going to take that seriously, right? This is we have a collective of creative technologists, about 200 people, our founders, our LPs, but also amazing lawyers, designers, IP professionals, and they're always out there telling us, being our surfaces of outreach. And that's one of the ways that we can drive proprietary deal flow is because I don't necessarily need to be in the room, but I need to make sure that there's someone that I trust in the room, whose people judgment I trust. So that social proof of that introduction is a key way to get acknowledged. I would say another way to be seen as an A player, if you don't obviously present that way, is to show results. Have you landed some customers or some amazing design partners? Have you built some incredible technology? Have you hard to get angel investor who is super knowledgeable about your specific space. Have you gotten them to commit? So there's a lot of ways that you can signal that you're good if you're not someone that interviews well or presents well.
Yeah, or someone who doesn't have that traditional background that it looks sexy. The results.
Yeah, results count.
Results count. Awesome. Then let's talk about you being an entrepreneur, because you run a fund, you had to raise your investors called LPs, but you're on the same page with founders, right? So during the due diligence, you probably due diligence the salary, founder salary. Mm-hmm. And we all know how it's expensive to live in the city. So what do you consider a reasonable salary for a founder, pre-seed seed?
Yeah, so I would say there's like 3 levels of salary that we see. So the first is for the people who've already made a lot of money. They're typically paying themselves minimally, like $50K maybe, just getting health insurance, paying themselves minimally. But I'm talking about people who have been, they've had a previous exit, so they don't really need the money. Yeah. So they're typically paying themselves whatever, $50K, $40K, something like that.
Yeah, like for us, I did $1K salary and I'm covered by insurance.
Right.
So you have to have a minimum salary.
Minimum salary, exactly. And so we see that for the multi-exit founder, the person who's had like a big executive job, so that happens. The bulk of founders are making somewhere between 100 and 150K, I would say. Probably today, it used to be 100 to 150, probably today it's more like 120 to 170. And I'm talking about founders living in San Francisco or New York, because it is expensive and you need to pay yourself, and I believe that you need to be able to like pay your rent, buy flowers for your sweetie, things like this. And you're not balling out at 150K in San Francisco. We do have a third tier, which is 175 to 225. I think 225 is really the top that I've seen, unless you're in biotech. People make more money in biotech. I don't know why. Like biotech seems to like be cool with bigger salaries. I don't know if it's a pharma influence, but I don't do a lot of bio. But 175 to 225 tends to be someone who has a high personal burn rate. They've got multiple kids, maybe in private school, in daycare. They might have an expensive alimony payment that they're making, right? They just have a high personal burn rate, but that's always a conversation. If we see in the operating plan that you're paying yourself more than 150, maybe 170 for sure, we're gonna have a chat and just wanna understand like why, right? And the reason is because every dollar that you spend, it's money that you're burning, right? So it reduces the amount of time that you have to build, and we just want to make sure we're understanding like why you need that level of compensation as a founder.
I'm actually curious about that, because that was like one of my fears, coming from big law, obviously good salary, and I was like, I don't want to be a poor founder eating like ramen, right? So for those founders who have careers behind them, like 10 years, for example, in order for me to hire a coolie partner, the minimum salary has to start at $1 million. Like they want, like that is already for them a pay cut, right. So I'm curious, what are you thinking in terms of those professionals, like college students in their 20s, okay, but when you're trying to hire A players in the industry, like I'm hiring a lawyer right now and I'm offering between like $250 starting from a junior lawyer to $400. And if I don't know how to convince a player to get less than $250 like as a minimum,
Equity. I think comp is equity plus cash.
Yeah.
And so we are really looking, and I'll give you an example. Like we had a founding team, they were recruiting a CTO. CTO is later in their career had a big resume. They had a big resume that had a big career. They were making a lot of money. And they seemed unwilling to take a lean salary, a startup salary, even though they were getting a really nice equity package. And my partner, Matt, we do the board together. Matt was like, that's a red flag. What's going on there? And I was like, I don't know. Like, it's probably fine. Like, I really wanted to close this guy.
Yeah,
right? I was like, it's probably fine. And he was like, I don't know. I think there's something up. 6 months later, he was gone. He took a competing offer for more money. And so I think that right now, especially with AI salaries, it's very tough. But the entrepreneurial like bug is to say, I want to build something really big and I want to own it and I want to have control and I'm going to take this bet on myself to build for the big upside, right? I think that in my career, that has always been true. I do think that the crazy AI ramp and crazy valuations and secondary opportunities is actually locking up a lot of talent because people are making so much money. Like when I started investing in the 20 teens, people were making maybe 500K, right, at Facebook. And you were saying, oh, make 150 and get equity. But now it's like people are making millions of dollars in their salary. And so there's like life-changing money. So I do think like I'm kind of talking out of one side of my mouth and also like being real that it's very hard to recruit talent right now and technical talent. And the salary pull and challenge for early stage founders is tough. The good news is you do need fewer employees because of AI. So you can spend more per employee if you need fewer people. Right. But anyway, it's all a bit like in the blender right now.
But high salaries for the team is not a red flag for you. It's only for the founders.
So I expect them to pay reasonable competitive salaries for the team because you have to recruit the best talent and they're not getting the same equity packages as the founders. For the founders, like you're in it for the equity, you're in it for the long haul, you're in it for the upside. So we expect you to be like lean on the salary and like we have 2 founders that left. I think they were making 4 and 5 million each a year, to build the startup. So if they were just in it to like get rich, they could do that. Like there's clearly something in them that is motivating them beyond just the money.
Let's talk about that because I think it's related to venture scale and what you're optimizing for in terms of opportunity. Because those people who are successful, they can make a couple of $1 million a year in salary. They will pay high taxes, but like they're going to be wealthy, but not crazy wealthy. So what motivates those people? Is it to become a billionaire? Is it impact? Is it both? What do you usually see? And what motivates you? Because you are as entrepreneurial as any founder you invest in.
Yeah, I think it's a calling.
What is your calling?
My calling is to empower people on their mission. Like, I really do believe the like professional fairy godmother identity is mine. Like my job is to find Cinderella who's in rags, who has this dream, who's being held back in some way or doesn't have the things she needs to like go to the ball and meet her prince. And to be like, I can make you a magic pumpkin. and I can't go to the ball and land the guy. Like that's on you, right? But like I have this ability to see something in people that other people haven't seen yet and to give them the things that they need to go on their journey. And on their mission. And for me personally, and this is not a mission of the fund, but it is for me personally, it's also a feminist mission. I have been deeply feminist from the time I was very young. I went to all girls school, I went to all girls camp, and like I'm here to like make a lot of women really successful and help them run their own table. And I do think that's a bigger piece of my mission. Again, we invest in all genders at my fund, but I do have a track record of investing in a lot of female founders. And I think that's another piece of like what drives me.
How did you know it's your calling?
I think you just feel it. Like I think.
When did it click?
I remember I had just moved to San Francisco. I had driven a U-Haul out here. One of my friends falsified an employment letter so I could qualify for an apartment. I had been sleeping in her warehouse. It's 2014. And
not that long time ago.
No, yeah, I mean over 10 years. But like I got my first venture job. And I think it was only like a few weeks in, I can remember just walking through the city and it was like I had been in flow state for 3 weeks. And it was like someone had unleashed me into the world. And for the first time, all of my power was welcome and I could use it. And it just felt like I was really in flow state constantly. All the time. And I worked probably 100 hours a week. Like I worked nonstop, but it felt good. It felt so good. And I was able to bring so much creativity and all of my intelligence, all of my creativity, all of my EQ. And it really felt like making magic. But I remember I was on the Embarcadero. I'm pointing because we're by the Embarcadero. I was on the Embarcadero and I could just like feel the wind on my face. And I was just like, this is what I meant to do. That moment. I also remember the first time I like finished docs, my first investment, which was only a year later. So I got to start leading deals very early in my career, was to a female founder from Stanford. She later sold the business, like great success, and we're still friends. She's in our collective. And you would laugh, like I had to do all my own legal negotiations. My senior partner made me, I didn't know that like lawyers did this for you. I thought this is what I do. So I was doing all my own. She had never negotiated. I had never negotiated. These docs were dripping with red ink. It was like, she and I laugh about this. Like it was the messiest, like it was the worst negotiation ever. Like, thank God we really liked each other. Like we wanted to do business together. It was so bad. But it was also just like, I did that. And
you negotiated the whole deal, like
like the whole deal
without lawyers.
No lawyers. No, I didn't know it was normal for VCs to have lawyers. Like because we were in a small fund, it was a $30 million fund. My senior partner had been in the business for 30 years, so he did everything himself.
Okay.
And so I thought it was normal to do everything yourself. So I would like call him, like I got the docs, and I would call him and be like, what does this mean? And he was like, it's in English, figure it out. I'm like, there's no chat GPT. Like, this was me trying to understand like, what does this mean? And she had a bad lawyer too. If you have good lawyers, you can get a lot done quickly, but she had a bad lawyer. And so like she didn't want to pay fees. So we're on the phone talking about like esoteric terms that do not matter. I'm trying to remember, like, why did he say that mattered? I'm trying to like anyway, it was so messy, but I think of it fondly because it was like, I cared enough to get it done. And it started, we've now been friends for a decade, right? And so just getting to be with her on that journey and like I gave her the first check that meant that she could move to the city and hire her first employees and build her dream, right? And that was the first time where I saw it happen. And I, who knows if she would have raised from other people, but like, it was like, oh man, I got to be a part of that, of making that happen.
You made the magic.
Yeah. And it was like just a deep sense of spiritual satisfaction.
Oh my God. Thank you. You walk me through this journey, like this roller coaster. Hold on, you didn't have a lawyer, and it feels like it's very similar to early stage founders who don't have a lawyer. They have a shitty lawyer and they do things themselves.
I would rather someone have no lawyer than a shitty lawyer. I know that's bad, but like bad lawyers are the actual worst.
What is the bad lawyer? What is the definition?
Oh my God. Okay, number one is, and this is also even like junior lawyers at good firms can be this way. The lawyer that wants to add value. The lawyer that's like, they want to add value. And so they want to like get into something that really doesn't matter. Like bad lawyers, in my experience, worry about and make other people worry about superfluous stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
And inconsequential.
Yeah, inconsequential stuff. And then you get stressed out and like you lose sight of what really matters.
Yeah.
Great lawyers talk to you at a business level and they're like, what do you care about?
Yeah.
And you're like, I care about these things. You're like, great, then these are the 3 terms that you care about.
Yeah.
Let's focus on that. And like, they give it a read and they make sure there's nothing in there that's going to kill you. But like, they help you focus on how the key business points are in the docs, and they don't make you worry about some edge case thing. Also, bad lawyers will make you think that everybody's out to get you. I think that's another thing that I've seen. And I get that like VCs don't have the best reputation. So not everyone is assuming that we have good intentions. But I've had bad lawyers be like, no, kind of saying that we're doing nefarious stuff because we have X, Y, or Z term. And when we explain, oh no, this term is because of this, this, and this, the founder's like, oh, I get it. But like bad lawyers, I think really make people second guess sometimes the intentions instead of just talking about them. But over lawyering, trying to add value when it's like not necessary, like distracting from the key points. And then also like lawyers shouldn't negotiate business terms. Like if lawyers are starting to negotiate business terms, it's like, that's not the right thing. Like the lawyer is there to help you like put into effect the business outcome that you want. That's their role.
Yeah.
Like their role is not to tell you what you should care about at the business level. So I think that's also like lawyers understand their expertise and their lane, and bad lawyers will often cross out of that.
What is the biggest legal mistake you've made or seen founders make?
I had someone who didn't file their 83B election.
Okay, how did they find out? What was the consequence?
I think I asked them. Like, I think it came up maybe a year later. I think I was talking about 83Bs and they were like, what's that?
No way.
And I was like, you didn't file an 83B election? And they were like, I don't think so. And I was like, who's your lawyer? And I had remembered, usually like when we get into a negotiation, you know, I ask who's opposing counsel, and if they're at a good firm, you know, good things are going to happen. You know, it's bad news when it's like a family lawyer. And they had this like family lawyer, and the family lawyer like didn't have them sign the 83B, and so financially that's, I mean, you can talk about why you know, not signing 83Bs, but with that it's such an easy thing to do. Yeah, it's such an easy thing to do, and it's a simple mistake. Like it's a simple mistake that cost them.
And you recommended going to a lawyer, fixing, and like it was not like that big of a deal, or like, because I had a situation, a woman founder realized she didn't file it in the middle of Series A. She had to pay $700K, and with salaries, it's not possible. You don't have that kind of money to pay.
Yeah, so they just owed a ton of money, and so they paid for it, and luckily they had it. But I don't even know what the total amount was. But to me, I guess that's not the biggest mistake because it's a solvable mistake. I would say, but it's a stupid mistake.
It's like, right? It's a stupid mistake that affects money.
Exactly. It's just like, if your lawyer doesn't have you do your ATP, you should fire your lawyer. But also, like, why did you hire them? Because no one decent is going to forget that.
Yeah.
Other big mistakes that I've seen, I mean, not all co-founder relationships work out. And the negotiations around getting equity back from departed co-founders, like those have been messy and expensive, and like people who didn't, I won't name names, but we did the deal and we required them that they put vesting in place and they didn't.
Oh.
Yeah, and there was some funky stuff that had gone on with acceleration. And
I feel those moments where I really make a difference is when, like those things, when things are falling apart and you see how the legal things you put in place, they play out. Now we have 2 companies in litigation and we're winning. And I know 2 companies. One is a client who went bankrupt because it came too late. There was no business schedule, and venture investor asked to help. And I'm like, guys, I'm not, like, I can't do magic retroactively. And like seeing those details, how that made a huge difference. Like in the middle of litigation, we're winning, the company is raising money, how I'm disclosing it during due diligence, and the company is moving forward. And it just like, it feels so good that I knew that if they came to me like 3 months later, it would be a different outcome. And like I made a difference.
Well, and this is to me, like I consider our fund counsel and I consider the person that I have as my kind of deal focused lawyer, they're part of my team.
Yeah, extension of your
team.
Like
1,000%, they're an extension of my team. And I do not do all my own negotiations now. I actually use a lawyer. I love him. He's amazing. But like having great people around you, great people who are on your team is critical. And you need those subject matter experts who are going to be fast, who are going to be strategic, who are going to know what's happening in the market. That's what market intelligence is, another huge issue. Like a lot of people don't want to hire, you know, Cooley for fund formation. And I think it's a mistake. Like for fund formation, you want the firm that forms all the funds. You want the firm that understands what the distributions of normative terms are. And you don't need Cooley to do your deal docs, but you do want them to do your venture fund, in my opinion. And there are lots of cheaper ways to do it, but you want the people who know where the market is. And so I think that kind of understanding the norms, understanding what's going on is really, really important, which is why I think specialists are super important. So that's why you don't want your family lawyer doing your startup stuff because that's not their specialty. So you really want to be with this specialist.
Yeah. And that's what I realized when I joined Cooley. I worked at a smaller law firm, and it's not about what law means or what the law says, it's what the market does. And I remember my first weeks, a partner called me and I marked up the document and he's like, have you seen A16Z do this? And I'm like, no, but we have leverage.
Right. Right.
Like, why not? He's like, we're gonna look stupid because it's not market.
Yeah.
And I think that's why now we're productizing legal. That's why it's really hard, because it's not Googleable. It was learned if you worked at a big law firm, you were doing the deals. And now, because we have the deals and we work with top tier startups and venture funds, that's why we know what market is. And that's how you know what's consequential and what's not consequential. Because if you don't know what market is, all the terms seem important, right?
Right, right. Well, and I think you both want to know what's market, what's not market and acceptable, what's not market and unacceptable, right? And if you don't have visibility into what market is, you can't figure out what's on the edge and what matters or doesn't matter. So like all of this stuff, this is why it's important to be in the mix and so, and why I think Lexi's really cool.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Yeah, and that's why it's really honestly hard to automate those things, because my engineer's like, where is this database where I know how everything is done? I'm like, it's staring at you, dude.
Yeah, totally.
Help me.
Totally,
You know?
totally. But I'll give you an example. So we were talking to an LP and they had a question about our LPA, which is basically like the document that outlines the terms of the funds. And it was like a really, really deep question. And they were kind of like throwing up on it. Like, we don't want this term. We don't think it's standard. Like, I fire an email off to John at Cooley and I'm like, John, tell me about if it's standard term or not. Within, I think 3 hours, he'd emailed me and he'd been like, of 148 peer firms, like of your size, like 63% of them have this term. And I was like, thank you, like copy and paste, and the LP was fine, right? So it's all having that ability to not only know what's market, but back it up, right? Back it up with data and then use that in business cases, in business situations. It's extremely helpful.
That was our edge when we were raising the angel round. So that was the biggest thing that we realized that we have to incorporate in the product, predictive intelligence, we call it, that it tracks the database for all of the clients. And once the database grows, you can like the software will be giving those, not John. I know John, he's incredible.
Yeah.
But that information, if the database is structured, AI can do it like that. Out of 63% out of 145 on our platform has the term.
Right.
So that is, I think, what is important. And it's hard to do, but I think that's where the actual value is. It's not in the ChatGPT telling you what liquidation preference is.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, cool. Do you need a technical co-founder nowadays, you think?
Oh man, I just backed a solo founder who doesn't have her CTO yet.
Yes.
So my answer is yes, but my behavior says no. And I think that this is something I've been wrestling with, because I have backed a number of non-technical founders who have an engineer identified, or they're going to hire a CTO right away, and it's been very hard to recruit and retain those people. And if you can't recruit and retain those people, you cannot execute. And then you're spending a lot of money on the month to month, either on consultants or just burning while you're trying to hire in and stabilize, your engineering team. So I think I have a pretty firm policy now that you need to have your technical co-founder. My behavior, I just, actually just posted
You break the rules.
Yeah, I break the rules, right? There's an exceptional CEO, and she had 3 real CTO candidates, all of whom she had worked with, all of which she was interviewing, all of whom she had gotten to the level of deep in the diligence process. And this was a very early pre-seed, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go for it because I don't want to lose this. I had seen it first. But the valuation was lower because of that, right? Because there was more risk in the deal, right? And so the check size was lower, the valuation was lower.
Yeah.
So I think I'm now pricing that risk. I would much rather back the CEO, CTO, hacker, hustler combination, as would most VCs. Yeah. But I do make more exceptions than most, and I have seen it work out, but especially with AI salaries and all that, it is getting harder to recruit in that engineering talent if you don't have that founder.
But also, I think the thing that happened 6 months ago. You could not create your own product. Now you can. And the thing that like blows my mind is I actually always code the V1 of everything because only you have the vision, and engineers will not have your vision because they are not customers. They don't know the problem and everything.
So I think it depends on what you're building in.
Yeah.
So I have a rule with any consumer company. I will not back a company the consumer company that doesn't have a founder who is the customer or really knows that customer intimately. I think for consumer, that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
Like you can't hire the insights and the intuition and the taste, right? That's really, really hard.
Yeah.
I think for enterprise, it's a little different.
Yeah.
And I do think that like all the vibe coding and the ability to like hack something together, it's good, but you don't really build, I don't know, we haven't seen people build big, durable scaling businesses with that infrastructure. So it probably depends on the complexity of the product. But I think you're gonna move faster, you're gonna evolve more quickly, in every aspect of the business if you have technologists in-house. That's still my belief.
It's actually mind-blowing. 6 months ago, I would say differently, but now because I do it every day, I code every day, the engineering team always reviews my pull requests and they ensure privacy and scalability, that everything is merging correctly, but it's just insane how it's moving. And for engineers, it's really hard to adapt. They're no longer coding. They're no longer reviewing every line of code. Like, the speed of change is just insane.
It is, and I think this is why I'm almost like hesitant to take a stance on something, because we're really looking at things on a case-by-case basis, because things are moving very quickly, right? And I think it depends on the space that you're in. It depends on who you are. It depends on so many things. And again, like I have backed non-technical founders without a technical co-founder. My preference is still to have the hacker hustler combo, but we're evolving in real time.
Yeah, like my hot take is that unless you have a co-founder, it's like marriage. Like unless it clicks, don't push because you have to have a co-founder, because you're gonna waste so much time and it's gonna end up in a divorce. Like do the things, but obviously it's nice to have marriage. But if it doesn't work out, then you have like you can build a technical team with you coding right now.
Yeah, as someone who's gone through a very expensive divorce.
Right?
Yeah, I'm intimately aware of that. And I have invested in many successful solo founders who, in the year after we wrote them their first check, recruited in a co-founder type person who was the yin to their yang. So like, I'm actually quite confident in that, and I'd rather have the right person versus, or I'd rather have no one versus the wrong person.
Exactly, because it's such a distraction.
Yeah, and I think actually the data, I was looking at the Carta data recently, and solo founders have become more prominent. It's still, again, like people want to see the duo if you can, because it's a long, hard road. But it is becoming more accepted.
But I do confirm, like, hiring the technical team was one of the hardest things for me.
Yeah.
And it did take a lot of time, and it did take a lot of help. And like the investors from my angel round really helped. We hired everyone. Like now we have 4 people plus technical advisor, 5 people plus PM, 6. Investors really help with that, to hire really fast on board, build the product.
Yeah.
I think that was one of the reasons why, like, okay, now I need to raise because I need more champions to help with recruiting.
Yep, totally.
And that was like one of the selling points. I think like founders choose investors, they need to see like, can you help me recruit do you have access to the A list of people? Because then it will be a recommendation coming from you. You give access to your list. With AI, a lot of founders are able to make millions of dollars, right? Like that, even like solo people. What do you consider venture scale in the age of AI? Because I think now ARR doesn't really show that, okay, this is a venture scale.
So I think it's really interesting because there's 2 parts of that, venture and scale, right? And I think the first question is, what do you mean by venture? And venture as an asset class has changed a lot in the last 10 years. And you have to remember that like the job of the venture capitalist is hopefully to return at least 5x net to their LPs, but it depends on where you are which means an LP gives me $1, like I'm going to give them 5 back, basically. And so depending on how big that fund is, that will lead to different math, right? So we have a $100 million fund and we invest $1 to $2 million. And we basically, at the very beginning, at the lowest possible price, and then we basically do our fund math so that every investment we're making has a shot on goal to return the fund. For our fund math, a $1 billion outcome, a $2 billion outcome can drive major returns for our fund.
Yeah.
So that works for our fund. If you have a $15 billion fund, like Andreessen Horowitz, a $1 billion fund is like a raindrop in the bay. Okay.
Yeah.
So your fund math is different. Now they're not trying to deliver 5x net to LPs, I don't think. They have a little bit of a lower multiple kind of strategy, I would imagine. And so part of it is like, who are you talking to and what's their fund math? What's their venture fund math? So for us, venture scale is that you're building a company that could grow relatively capital efficiently and exit for north of $1 billion. If your company can't do that, can be a great business, but it's probably not a fit for our fund, or it's not a fit for our fund. There are lots of funds that are so big now that the minimum exit value to move the needle for them is like 10 billion. And so you really need to look at what's the true upside for the business and what's the exit level that this fund is trying to drive, and are those things aligned? And so I think there used to be one venture scale answer, and there really isn't anymore. There's kind of like, do I move the needle for this fund? Do I move the needle for that fund? Because the game has changed with AI. Funds have gotten bigger, rounds have gotten bigger, expected exit values, needed exit values have gotten bigger.
Amazing. And the last question in terms of the valuation, you're flexible on the valuations, but what do you currently see in the market for pre-seed seed?
It's a nightmare right now. It is a nightmare. Pre-seed and seed valuations are a nightmare. And by a nightmare, I mean they are all over the place.
Yeah.
They're all over the place. And like recently, it used to be that AI companies were getting this really big premium. But then AI has gotten pushed into everything.
Yeah, now there's no AI.
Yeah, like AI, I mean, it's a same thing that happened with like mobile. Like in the 2010s, there was this whole wave of mobile, and then everything was mobile.
Yeah.
Right? And so when you're at the early side of a cycle, the thing is the thing. A few years later, it's permeated into everything that you do.
Yeah.
And so the premium that was getting paid for AI companies has trickled down into everything else.
Yeah.
But it's not clear that everything else has the same upside potential that those original inflated AI valuations had. And so we're at a moment where there's a lot of data out there showing how high the valuations are.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of investors are kind of looking at them and talking to founders and being like, hey, founder, like, I don't know that you can command a 20 million post-money valuation on this pre-seed company just because that's what the 75th percentile is for companies in this space in San Francisco. So I think it's great that there's a lot of data out there talking about median valuations. And I think it can be misleading because right now things are really, really messy in terms of what's normal. So to get to the heart of it, sorry, there was a lot of context, but for pre-seed valuations, we're seeing rounds in the 1 to 1.5 million. The median valuation or 50th percentile is 10 post. That's like 50th percentile. Means a lot of people are raising above it, a lot of people are raising below it. And once you get into those larger pre-seed rounds, it goes up, right? So it's another reminder that valuations aren't necessarily made just on the merits of the business. They're also made based on the math and how much the founder is selling and things like that. So it's a little bit wild, wild west right now. And it's definitely a topic that is hot for founders and for venture capitalists.
Yeah. Kate, thank you so much for coming and sharing your wisdom. I'm super excited for your entrepreneurial journey. And thank you for being yourself and sharing your light and using your light to empower others. It's incredible. I really appreciate it.
Oh,
You
such a
inspired
pleasure.
me.
It was so fun. Thank you for having me. Thank you. So great.